Okay, I would like to review with you how to do an article summary review. And then you will notice under the APA resources on your class page in Moodle, there are article summary review samples. And I would like to pull up one of these and go through it with you. So when you're doing an article summary, remember you're going to read the article and then you're going to summarize the article in your own words. Now when you do an article summary review, you make sure you don't say or write in there, you don't write the article said or the article stated or in the article it said and whatever. Because actually it's not the article that's saying anything. It's actually the author that is indicating something or researching something. So for instance, here on this article summary example, you'll see that it says Grusek and Goodnow, 1994, investigated, and so forth and so on. So actually, you're going to write the author's names and the publication date. And this is how you want to start each paragraph in some form or another, either starting with the author's name and giving the publication date and then summarizing, or you're going to start out with a sentence like this one: mothers tended to be more communicative in disciplining their sons than fathers. And then you're going to write the author's names and publication date after this first statement. Notice that is not a quote from the article. It's actually a summary of things that were being stated in the article. And so that is starting off that next paragraph, and then you can reference the authors and the publication date at the end of the sentence, and then there's the period. So either way is fine, but every time you start a new paragraph, you're going to refer to the authors in some manner. Now, we don't really want to quote things from the article very often because here you are summarizing. You're not quoting from the article. But every now and then there may be something that cannot be summarized. It's too important to actually state just like they did. And so in this article summary, you will see that there is one quote. And again, it says internalization as described by Grusek and Goodnow meant, and then there is a quote there. And then you will see the page number where the quote came from. And then again, it goes on to talk how the author discovered certain things. You don't have to give the publication date as long as you're in the same paragraph that you started with. And you've got the publication date at the beginning of that paragraph. And so it's just assumed that throughout that paragraph you're referring to these authors here, or that one particular author, whoever it is that has written the article. Again, you want to make sure you're summarizing in your own words. You're not quoting. You really don't want to quote that often in article summaries, and even in research papers. You really don't want to quote that often unless it's something that cannot be stated any other way. So in a big paper, you're probably not going to quote any more than 2 or 3 times. In a smaller article summary, if you have one quote, that's fine, but you really don't even need the one quote because you're summarizing. Again, let's remember, we're not saying the article stated or the article said. We're actually going to use the author's last names when you're summarizing. And you want to make sure that each paragraph you refer to the author and the publication date, as you see here and here. You do not need to put the publication date any further in that paragraph because, again, we know that is, we refer back to the first sentence and we see that the publication date is there. Now, if you are doing a paper where you're using more than one article to do your research, you then can use several authors in the same paragraph. Now, if you start with one author and then you switch to another author in the middle of the paragraph, you will need to put that author's name and the publication date of the new author. But then if you switch and go back to your first author, say Grusick and Goodnow, you will then have to put their last names and the publication date again because you have switched authors in one paragraph. Okay, I hope this is helpful for you. And remember, at the bottom of the page, you're going to put your reference. So even in just an article summary, put your reference and put it there correctly in APA format. So review your APA resources that are in your course to help you and to guide you along the way. And for those of you who are in EDU 173, you received an APA guide, that small little yellow booklet. And if you've already taken that course, please don't get rid of that booklet because you're going to need it for all your other coursework. So refer to these helpful hints and these guidelines that we are giving you. Thank you, and hopefully you'll be able to write your article summaries in the best way possible.